never mind. Hello, everyone. This is Rick at studioUSA, and it is time for another Fired Up Friday as we F around and find out if we are live and have audio, and we got lights up, and I got Wayne.
We got it all.
And I just started the countdown, or actually the stopwatch clock, so we're official in so many ways.
We are.
And we are even effing around and finding out about a format. And so we're super on trend. So we consulted the Oracle, or in today's world, ChatGPT.
Yeah, while we still have jobs,
Yes,
before ChatGPT
exactly.
does the whole thing for us.
Yes, before the robots take over and or kill us. And I've known that since 1984.
Yeah,
Terminator 1.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah. I've been ready.
Yeah, good.
So today, our topic is resilience.
Ooh.
And so it says here, fall 7 times, stand up 8 as a Japanese proverb. And then our takeaway, according to the robots, is identify a personal setback and take one step towards overcoming it this week. Let's talk about that in the past tense, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like doing past and present. I like that. That's good.
I do
that's
like
good.
current events. Yes.
Yeah.
So, there we go. So, I'm like vying for sponsorships
Yes,
here.
amen.
So
yes.
we've got, I have bipolar disorder. So this is my polar fizzy water right here. And we got Magic Mind. Dude, my head's about to explode.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, dude, I'm going next level. This is like ChatGPT 4.
Oh, yeah? Is that like your Adderall Vyvanse, but in liquid form? There we go.
Yes,
I like it.
exactly.
I like it.
Exactly. So we have the crew on hand, Stu and the crew over there, getting me my things. So as the topic is resilience,
Okay.
the first thing that comes to mind for me is I'm so grateful to be in the new location here, and you didn't see the old location that I'm still dealing with. It is like an albatross with a millstone attached to it on my neck, and it's like, how sometimes you don't know what you don't know,
right?
And then you realize, oh shit, I didn't know anything about anything. To say that my first experience with a commercial lease was a disaster would be a colossal understatement. So this used to like wear on me every night because it's like I hated going there. And now I come here every day. I was here on Christmas Day and Christmas Eve, like hanging lights. So like my Christmas lights this year were studio lights because I love this place so much. Yeah. But man, it took it out of me to, it's like thousands of dollars a month that just goes into the ether, for bad property management. So there's a story in there for all of my commercial real estate friends. But so what comes to mind when you think of resilience?
When I think of resilience, I think the biggest things that comes to mind for me is, it's one of, like you said, like fall 7, get up 8. Sounds so nice on a bumper sticker, right? Like that sounds great when you're saying to somebody else. It's a lot tougher when it's you. You know what I mean? And when you think about resilience, I think one of the biggest things that we've got to take into account there is like tough times are coming. Well, and I think a lot of times, especially as high achievers, we're like, all right, I made it through, and or we have this desire for everything to be smooth. But the reality is, like, tough times are coming, and are you preparing to be like resourceful and resilient in those moments? Because I think that's where, like you said, like that's where the legends are made. And I think part of it's like you got to go through that really like the low parts to be able to get where you want to go. But we don't. I think we don't prepare enough for those tough times. Right, we kind of get through like I'm good, or our only strategy to get through them is like work hard, when that's not necessarily the only thing that we need to use when we're in there.
And so to that, how do you avoid being cynical? Because the standard everybody, I call myself an optimistic nihilist,
right?
to where it's like, oh yeah, it's all going into the ditch, but we could probably pull it out, at the last minute. Because that's kind of how humans are wired in the macro.
Yes.
But as an individual, it's very easy to be like, because I'll tell on myself where I have this thing in my head where how it is right now is how it's going to be forever.
Right.
Whether it's, oh, this is kick ass, or this is the worst thing that has ever happened in the history of things happening. And so that's what dogged me on. And then the other thing is I don't like talking about it. So this is ironically me saying it like out loud to,
to
the 2.5 people that are watching. But so how do you avoid becoming just a cynic and just an immediate doomsayer?
Man, well, I think that here's part of it is like you begin to look at it more as a game, meaning like there's there's something tough around every corner in a sense, right? Like, you know, it's always coming after you. But I think when you say how do you deal with that, it's like breaking case of fire, right? Where, you know, we have, so I think you plan for the bad times, and then you kind of take that in other words, like, hey, here's my tool case, my toolkit of like the things I'm going to have in case there's a bad day, right? It's like I've got my first aid kit, I've got my spare tire. Like, I'm going to plan for those things. I'm going to put them in that toolbox, and then I can put the toolbox away and go crush it today. So it's like having a plan for like, hey, when shit does hit the fan, right? Like, here's what I'm going to go do. Now that I kind of have that plan, I can kind of put it to the side and go and go full force. Does that make any sense?
Yes, absolutely. And so to that, now, do you have? Because I know you do a lot in the coaching world, and the setting of, is that more of a one-on-one thing, or is that
I mean, I think we can do both. Like this, you know, a couple of years ago when the pandemic was coming, and who knew it was going to be like the greatest time for real estate ever, right? Like all y'all who think you predicted, you didn't predict crap. Like, I remember what it was, right? Like, every prediction was wrong. I don't know about you, but like every prediction was not wrong. Who knew plexiglass was going to be like the new gold for like 8 weeks? You know what I mean? But I set all my clients down and said, hey, you need to prepare for 3 rounds of cuts. Right? So the first round of cut is like, you need to go through your P&L, and here's probably the stuff we need to take care of like right now, like 5, 10%, whatever. Like, here's the first round of cuts. Now, and then we're going to articulate the second round. Second round is a little bit more painful, right? Second round is like, okay, now we're getting a little closer to the bone, right? Second round's going to be tough. So win this, then that. So if we get here, then we're going to do the second round. And then I had them articulate what was their third round. So like, write it down. And third round usually involves like people, right? Like jobs, you know, cutting back on salaries, whatever it is. But here's what was so cool, because they articulated like round 1, round 2, round 3, and what, like, hey, if it gets this bad, we do this level of cuts. If it gets this bad, we do this level. But because they like pre-made those lists out, they were able to kind of put those away in their drawer and get back to the action of today, right? Because instead of being afraid of tomorrow, they go, okay, if it gets blank, right, here, we know what we're going to do. But now, because we have that plan, we can get after what we need to go get today. Does that make sense?
Yes,
so like,
absolutely.
Having that was really, really important.
And I like that, because so much of this stuff and so much of the hustle porn and the things that that are put out just with, you know, like alarming regularity, where there's always, you know, even go back to like the Goggins thing where I saw you, where it's like my feed is never ending from that stuff.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like you said before, sound bites. It's, oh yeah, it sounds great, or it looks great on a bumper sticker, or it's a great thing to throw at somebody. But I like the fact that you're making it practical.
Yeah.
Where, because again, this will probably be like just me telling on myself most of the time, where I hate actually writing stuff down, and because then it's like, oh shit, now it's real.
Yeah.
You know, and then, oh my God, if I tell somebody else too, now it's really real.
Yeah.
And then they might expect me to do something. So it's like, ooh, we're getting into like uncharted territory here. Or we're driving off the map in a direction I don't want to go. And so like, how do you get folks to get over that hurdle? Because like, I will freely admit, like, oh, I'm still behind that hurdle, you know?
Yeah.
And so this is kind of helping me break out just from the standpoint of talking about stuff. Because I'm a huge believer in like the tribal aspect of human behavior, and so like with recovery, I have my little tribe of like dudes.
Well, that's really huge.
Yeah, and it's like it's my life, you know, like it is spider webbed out into my life, but they don't know f all about like what I do for a living or anything like that. And so like in my day-to-day world and in my business world, I don't really have anybody to talk to or to talk about, you know.
And I think that's one of the biggest. So when I wrote my book. You know, The Art of Getting Back Up, plug. Right, but when I wrote a book, one of the key things in there's like, you need people around you. Like one of the biggest misconceptions, especially for high achievers, that we're supposed to do it all on our own. Like, nobody succeeds all on their own, right? And by the way, it's the hardest, dumbest way to do it in the first place, right? Like, even if you could, it's the hardest, dumbest, right? Yeah, like, case in point, we tried. But you've got to build those people around before you need them. And that's the key, because usually people like look for them like in the worst moment, but you've got to build that tribe before you need it. So what I have a lot of my clients do is I have them write, and it sounds super weird, but I'll have them write down a missing person report. And it's like, all right, here's the dude I need in my life, or here's the person, or here's the circle, right? And they'll actually articulate what that person is, or who that person looks like, whatever it is. And they kind of manifest, attract them into their world. But like, you've got to get clear on this. So like, in a couple weeks, we're doing Broker Boardroom, and Broker Boardroom is for people that own independent brokerages or people that have large teams. But the reason I started doing Broker Boardroom is because those people didn't have anybody. right? Like they were constantly pouring out. They were constantly giving to everybody, but they didn't have a safe community where they're like, hey, here's what I'm doing with my commission splits. What do you think I should do? Or, hey, I'm losing people because of this. Or I'm having a tough day, right? Like they didn't have that community to have conversations with, so we created it, right? Out of need, So sometimes see a need, fill a need, but I think you've got to create that community where you can have those conversations. And what I realize is, most people don't have anything like that. Right? Like they're always pouring out, they're always giving, and then they wonder why they're exhausted, they wonder why they're depleted, because they don't have anything, right? And I remember my therapist, right, back to group therapy with us, right? Like, and this was not that long ago. My therapist was like, "You're on all the time," and I'm like, no, I'm not. And she's like, "No, really, you are. Like, you're on with your best friend." And I was like, "No, I'm not. Like, my best friend knows everything about me." And then she's like, And I was like, you might be right. Like, I'm not paying. I did. Right? But like she's like, you're so used to being on, you don't even realize you're on.
Yes.
And we can fall into that. When we're on all the time, we don't even realize it. And it's like, man, we're not letting our stuff show. We're not having those real conversations.
Well, and like you said there about being on all the time, there comes a point where like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing that is or isn't performative, because it's like I'll be the first one to admit, like, I love being like the center of attention and like getting on and doing a presentation or whatever, and it's like I want a giant crowd of people to love me, but from over there, so
Absolutely.
It's like I don't necessarily, or no, that's not even true, I don't ever look for like to let somebody behind the curtain, and kind of what you were saying earlier, for the independent broker or the folks that are entrepreneurial, you're on an island. Yeah. Like 99.9% of the time. And like, there's usually no manual or pamphlet that tells you what to do. Yeah. It's just like I said about, I opened up with the resilience thing about the lease, where it's like, ironically, I'm surrounded by real estate people all the time, and I end up just getting my ass kicked on a commercial lease, which it seemed like a good thing at the time, and so many things that I thought were going to happen didn't happen. Right. That's where the resilience kicked in. Yep. And thankfully, now that I'm an old dude, I've had my ass handed to me enough times to where I know that none of those are fatal. Right. Yeah. And then when it is fatal, ultimately, well, then problem solved. Right. Yeah. So what would you tell somebody that is, because it's like, I like the idea of, would you say see a need, fill a need? Yeah. Or find a need, fill a need? I like that. I like the alliteration better. Yeah. Find a need, fill a need. We might end up doing some kind of coach's gimmick out of here.
I love it. I like it.
Like we'll do our little tribal thing or something where we'll just get around and talk about our feelings.
Yeah, amen. Well, and I think when you think about resilience, this is a great thing for people to consider. And if you're watching this, write this down. Like you can switch your state at any time. Usually based on what you're saying and what you're focused on, right? But ask yourself, am I focused on what I have or what I don't have? Right? Am I focused on what I can control or what I can't control? And am I in the present or am I living in the past? Right? If I'm living in the past, I'm probably depressed. Right? If I'm living too much in the future, right, I'm probably anxious. Right? Like plan for the future, but if I live too much in the future, I'm probably anxious. But you ask yourself, like, how many people do we know that they're focused on what they can't control, they're focused on what they don't have, and they're either living in the future or the past? And like, how long can you go?
That's exhausting.
And have that's an exhausting experience. Yes. And that's where most people are, right? Entrepreneurs, right? That's where most people are. They're focused on what they don't have, right? What they haven't accomplished, what they haven't done, right? Whatever. And they're focused on what they can't control: interest rates, the government, all the other kind of stuff, right? And when you switch that, you can switch it just by questions. You can switch it by having a good friend to kick you in the tail, right? But when you switch that and you focus on, okay, here's what I do have, right? Here's what I can control. And what can I do right now? And this last year, year and a half when I was going through my divorce, one of my big phrases was next right decision, because my head was messed up a lot of the time, right? Like a lot of times, like just don't screw it up today, like do your best, but like I wasn't having big leaps forward. It was just like don't screw it up, you know what I mean? And a lot of times it was like, just do my motto was just do the next right thing, because I couldn't figure out 30 steps ahead. People were like, what are your goals for next year? I was like, I don't know. I'm trying to make it to 5. Like, I'm trying to make it through the next call, bro. Like, I cried 4 times this morning. Like, I don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to, like, remember to eat today. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Right? So, next right decision.
Well, and that brings it back into, like, my world of recovery, where the next right thing is always tried to put as the front and center thought. Like,
Yes.
you don't know what to do the next right thing.
Next right thing.
Because the next right thing is always
Yep.
the right thing.
Absolutely.
And, you know, to liken it back to like even early sobriety, where it's
Yeah.
like, well, how am I going to not, drink, do drugs, smoke, whatever for the rest of my life?
Right.
How about we just try about don't do it today?
Just don't do it today.
Yeah. And then come back tomorrow.
Yep.
You know, and like any good addictive personality having person, I find what works, then I stop doing it.
Yeah.
And
Amen.
it's like, oh man, this thing kicks ass. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I did it for like 3 weeks and then I quit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's the other thing where like the resiliency comes from, I think, the habit of, or building the habits, like you said,
Yeah.
next right thing.
Yep.
And just being able to be self-aware enough. Because that's the other thing, kind of going to what you were saying. Like most people, in my experience and my opinion, are sleepwalking through life where they're not present.
Yeah.
They're focused on, some bullshit highlight reel
Yeah.
of somebody else's life or whatever.
Yep.
And like, why am I not doing what they're doing? Or never even thinking about like, is that person actually happy or are they like acting like they're
Yeah.
happy? Because I couldn't tell you how many people, myself included, where like the social media veneer was like, and then the next thing you know, oh, they got divorced.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Well, it's like that whole thing. If like if you were in the room with 50 people you love or look up to, and everybody threw their problems in the air, you'd probably grab yours back.
Yes.
Right. Like if you got to see what everybody else is, you're probably like, I think I'll just take mine back. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
you probably don't want to know what you or deal with theirs. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a thing there where I'm not sure how I ever got to the place where it's like I didn't want to acknowledge certain things that, like you said, that were like either out of my control or embarrassing. Like my kryptonite is like embarrassing shit. Which
Yep.
like for whatever reason, I just so this is an exercise in me talking about things that like, oh yeah, that sucked and it happened, So now what do you tell somebody that is like literally wanting to start this from scratch, since it's literally the first week? I'm going to say literally a lot, literally, where it's the first Friday of the year. So, okay, now we want to practice resiliency because I like the fact that you kind of alluded to it's learned behavior, or it can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can be learned behavior. So would you tell somebody to like sit down and like think of the top 3 things that are bothering you, or like, or whatever? Like what would your launch pad?
And I think you hit on something really important there, like confronting reality. So I think when we spend too much time avoiding. So I think let me say it this way: every frustration is an indication, right? So every frustration, and I want you to imagine like when you have a frustration, like, oh, it's late for that appointment, or man, I screwed that, whatever. Like every frustration is like a little light on the dashboard of your car. And for most of us, it's just an indication, right? Like something's off, right? But most of us high achievers, right, instead of doing any kind of investigation, we just take a bunch of aspirin, right? We're like, oh, I have a headache, right? We're just like, work harder, right? Or like just pound aspirin, right? It's like, maybe don't do an investigation. It's like maybe you should drink water at some point, Wayne. You know what I mean? Like, right? Or like, right? Maybe you should change. Like, we don't do an investigation. We just like hammer it out, right? Just work harder, or do more of what we're already doing, right? Hammer, 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 and it's like. Every frustration is an indication that maybe we should do some sort of investigation. What's leading me to have this frustration? What's leading me to? I remember one of my clients. He hated we began to become aware that he hated every Tuesday, and I was like, bro, you're the doctor. It's your practice. You can change Tuesdays. And it was like, oh my gosh, I could do. I'm like, let's just change your schedule. And it was like this light bulb went up. But like you said, it's like the awareness. Like instead of him just hating Tuesdays for the next 30 years, like let's just change what you do on Tuesdays. Let's change the schedule. So I think that's a big part of it. And then to get really, really into the nitty gritty, every day I would do these simple things. I would write down every morning 3 specific things you're grateful for, and what your 3 musts are for the day. So instead of we have our coulds, then we have our shoulds, and then what are your 2 or 3 musts? So at least it's like, hey, at least I got those done, right? There's 1,000 to-dos, but at least I got these done. And then at the end of the day, get intentional. Instead of having the pinball reflection, get intentional. Write down what are 2 or 3 things you learned and what are 2 or 3 wins. And like just get in that habit of collecting and documenting that. And then realize that resiliency is something that it's a muscle you work over time, right? So like one of my clients, one of the things that he said he was the most proud of, he goes, hey, this thing that happened last week, he goes, a year ago before our coaching, that would have messed me up for like 4 or 5 days. Like that would have stole my week, this thing happening, right? And he goes, now, it was a bad couple hours, but it wasn't a bad 5 days. Right, but that came from us working together and questions, all stuff. So it went from 5 days to 4 days to 3 days to 2. Right after these events happened, so it wasn't like never let that happen, never have a bad day. It was just like I want to once I catch myself, get back up faster and a little faster and a little faster. Then all of a sudden you're like, man, that thing that would have messed me up, I can process it in 5 minutes because I worked that muscle.
Dude, I love it. And we're going for 20 minutes. Look at that, dude, right on the
Oh,
nose.
look at
and
that.
you dialed it in and brought
Boom.
it back
You
to
brought
the
the
get up 8 times.
There you go.
Yeah, if you fall 7. All right, that is Fired Up Friday for the first week of 2024, and we are out. Take us out, Ricky.
Boom.